So quickly moving on to the Roundtable 2, the topic for today right now is called Investing in Senior Care, the Private Capital Opportunity. Well, we are extremely thrilled to unveil the powerhouse panel for our upcoming discussion, which is going to be on investing in senior care, the private capital opportunity. The recent startup and funding boom in the space reflects excitement around the senior care that is already a $7 billion plus market growing at 20%. Well, this session will focus on investor perspectives and how do they view the Silver's opportunity. So get ready for the thought-provoking insights and visionary perspectives from the industry leaders who are going to be shaping the future of senior care management. It gives me great honor to be welcoming the moderator here for all of you, ladies and gentlemen. So please help me in welcoming on stage Ms. Singh, Vachani, Executive Chairperson from Antara Senior Care to take over the stage. Hi, a very warm welcome to you. And quickly, up next, let's welcome the panelists to join me on stage. Mr. Prakash, founding partner, ASLI member, National Startup Advisory Council, Government of India Chairman, Vision Group of Startups, Government of Karnataka Chairman, and Unboxing, Bangalore Foundation Chairman. United Way, Bengaluru, oh my God. Had to really take a breath, huh? So let's welcome Ms. Priya Mohan, partner, General Catalyst, to take over the stage for all of us. Let's clap, ladies and gentlemen. Let's clap, clap, clap. A very warm welcome to you. Let's welcome Ms. Pavitra Shankar, Managing Director, Brigade Enterprise Limited, to join us on stage. And lastly, Dr. Rana Mehta, partner and leader Healthcare India. Over to Ms. Singh, and over to you.
Super good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to see such an action-packed room with action-packed conversations. We don't have a lot of time for the very interesting panel that we have that come from different and diverse backgrounds. So before I start with my questions, may I ask each of you to please introduce yourself in the context of why being here today is important to you and the journey you have had professionally that has made you interested in this space to begin with. And then I will take over to ask.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here. I think it's amazing to see how it's grown. I've been at a couple of ASLI conferences. I can't believe how big the room has got. So I think our basic interest is a couple of years we did a report on how do you catalyze senior care in India. And I think everyone in the room practically was interviewed that time. And it's great to see in 2.5 years where we've gone, but the government has also adopted some of that and made it as the cornerstone. I think when we are looking at senior care, I think the whole ecosystem growth, how does it grow, how does it become? Because we've seen how healthcare has come in the last 5 years. There was a pre-COVID, there's a post-COVID. How can we catalyze this? And that's what excites me about today.
Thank you for having me. Extremely excited. This is my second ASLI. This space is deeply personal for me, as it is for almost all of us, right? I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 73-year-old mother. So I'm bang smack in the middle. And you see how the agency is very different between the three stakeholders, right? And when we started thinking about senior care, the first thing that struck me was, and I've been an edtech entrepreneur, how there is agency between the parent and the child. Here there's a disbursement of agency between the child and the parent, and how they think differently. And in a world which is growing so fast with technology, with AI, I see my mother at 73 still driving, extremely active. But you buy her a wearable, she's never charged it, right? But she's always on a WhatsApp, she's always on a YouTube. This is a generation which is catching up, but still holding on to nostalgia, right? So there's this whole concept of agency, which actually made us think as to how do you create, and you can't trivialize it calling a product, how do you create a solution? How do you create something for this generation, which is going to be the most important generation in India, and a growing generation, which gives them this agency? And to think about it, you can't do it in the traditional venture models or the traditional boundary conditions, and Prashant knows this better than anybody. And you need to think outside the box. So that's what excited me about this space.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be here. So I'm Managing Director of Brigade Group, Pavitra. We have actually done a couple of senior living communities, or I would say we have one functioning senior living community. We've looked at this space 3 to 4 times earlier, even as early as the mid-90s, and found that we were too early in the space to really sort of scale up. And we've kept trying to address the space over and over again. And it's incredible to see how large the ecosystem is today and the kind of excitement and expectations there are of this sector. So as a real estate developer, we focus a lot on Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, South Indian cities. And interestingly, this is also where there is maximum sort of uptake of senior living communities. So I think this is something Brigade wants to look at very closely. In the past, we've, I would say we are still experimenting with getting it done the right way. We are investing in land, we're investing in construction, we're approaching it like a typical real estate project, and it is anything but a typical real estate project. So that's the kind of journey that we are on today. How do you understand what the end consumer wants? And sometimes it's not just the people who are living there, but their children who are buying from you. How do we expand this ecosystem to more of a renting versus then buying? For real estate, that's a very different way for a developer to think. So, you know, I'm excited to meet everyone in this space and also understand how it's evolved from the last couple of times that we've tried to interact with it. So, looking forward to the discussions today.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is my first ASLI conference. The trajectory of my life has been that every 5-10 years I've shifted my focus onto something new, and the last 3-4 years it's been, whether we like it or not, this term health span or longevity. And in that context, I think you know, I've been really looking at what's the paradigm for health in our country, and is this whole medicine 2.0 you know, going to undergo a transformation faster in India than any other place to medicine 3.0 and precision medicine and some of these. And it will not, like what we and a lot of us focus is, you know, it has to be done not by incumbents, but by new entrepreneurs and new folks, right? So, so that's my interest. Really, you know, now that preventive care and proactive care has gotten redefined in this world of multi-omics and precision medicine. You know, we don't have, fortunately in India, a health system that is totally compromised by insurance yet. So we have the opportunity to kind of accelerate innovation in this new paradigm of health, and where you can apply it most is for geriatrics, and yeah, at least these are folks who are in the last stages, and if you can, I mean, it's not good to kill them with more and more drugs. So if we can do a different paradigm there, I think it will be most advantageous, and the leverage is the highest in my mind from a human pain perspective. So that's my interest in this space.
And Prashant, I'll, you know, if you can keep the mic with you, and we'll start a bit of the discussion around there. You are known for, you know, being a out-of-the-box VC, and the fact that you are, you know, talked about how you are seeing aging and health. What would it take for anybody in this room who wants to raise capital is in the senior care space and that ecosystem? And Dr. Mehta, I'll come back to you about that ecosystem. What would it take for you to say, okay, I will write a check for this person? What is it that you, as a trendsetter in the VC world, are looking for in an organization or an idea that would make you interested?
So I'm looking for ideas that really are not 1x better, 2x better, right? Ideas that are transformational. And today in India, we have the science and the IP and the engineering capability to define some of this for global benchmarks, right? So, and I gave some examples of why medicine 3.0, I'm so bullish that it's going to happen from India at scale, as much of a possibility of that than somewhere else globally, right? Similarly, I think in all kinds of, I mean, there are diagnostic and, you know, very, very lightweight, quick scan, quick diagnostics, low radiation, high leverage devices. And a lot of these medical devices also are going to come from India, right? So that's great. Then the whole idea of concierge medicine, right? So there are people who can afford concierge medicine, but there is nobody who's defined a service that longitudinally tracks, has both the technology and the capability to longitudinally track the data, be data-driven in terms of how you engage. I mean, a lot of technologies have to come together, and like I said, it's a very unique space where you need deep science, you need good engineering for devices and good technology, and of course you need great entrepreneurs who can take it to market and kind of integrate. It's not about integrative medicine, it's about how you integrate all these different modalities together. Yeah. So there's opportunities everywhere, and today I've funded about 3-4 companies in different areas here, but they're all early stage, and also just recently got started with a company called BioPeak, which is hopefully will integrate a lot of these, because you got to take it to market, and initially take it to market, and there'll be different layers of go to market, right? So you'll have offerings that will be about, I'm thinking, it's the whole idea of a family health office, right? So if you redefine family health office in India, everybody today is paying for a wealth manager, with anybody even above, let's say, 50 lakhs in yearly income as a wealth manager. So why can't you have a health manager? And it's redefining of health at multiple levels. It will take time, but I think a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities across the board.
Super. So I think your vision in tech, longevity, health, diagnostics, so anyone who's thinking of that, you know who to come and talk to. Priya, to you, you did probably the largest seed investment in this space, which this year actually. And what was the sort of catalyst to do it? I know you talked about the real life reasons that you're interested in this space, but as an investor, what were the feeding points for you to take that decision, and what are you forecasting in the whole capital markets, investor, private capital space in the entire senior care ecosystem?
So Tara, I think as an investor, you have to consider 3 important points. One is, the most important is, no matter how good your intent is and your PMF is and everything, the timing has to be right. And we truly believe that there is an inflection point in the Indian market today, not just from an affordability perspective, but really from an internalization as to how important the recognition of this segment as an independent, important segment which is growing and is meaningful in the diaspora is something which is the most, seen now than it was before. The second part is the customers themselves started by, there's not a single friend of mine or a single person I know who do not worry about, and the common thing is, I don't pick up my parents' calls and I'm busy, but when is that SOS call, right? That this disconnect and the concept of nuclear families and the challenges that it brings. And the third part is, like Prashant said, technology. Today, we've got immense amount of data and technology for this concept of continuous care. When we were, doing the thesis, actually, it's like we always see the tip of the mountain before the climb. I think there was a lot of time, there was a lot of hard work before we took the call on this. And the first thing we realized is we cannot take this approach as a typical venture capital fund. That's why, our merger with General Catalyst helped, because as a platform, we think about it as venture beyond. We're very comfortable taking bets on industries where we can structurally make a difference with capital, network, and taking a long play. Yeah. So that's a big distinction, and I have to be honest, because I'm not sure I could have had the same advantage had I been in a typical venture startup. The second thing is, our thesis was focus on active seniors, then going into inactive seniors, because there's a lot of great people here already solving for inactive seniors, be it in dementia or, other care or hospice and everything. But we said there's this whole bunch of active seniors, and what are the 3 pillars of trust for these seniors? It's home, health, wealth, right? And I see this in my parents, I see this everywhere. So if you leave health and wealth, which are two specialists, home is a very important space. How do you make home a destination for trust and becoming an anchor, because that's a place of comfort, community where they have their friends, and build, solutioning. And I'll specifically use the word solutioning to Prashant's point. It's very unique. Is I really look for founders who are able to visualize and tell me the story of the customer. This is a very unique customer. You can't come and say, hey, I have this great app, and it might be the best for these folks, but do you really know the signs of these folks, how they operate, what are they have a very different life compared to us. So I really look for that meaningful customer insight and that conviction and the ability to solution. I think that's the word I would use, right? You can have all the technology. How do you solution something that, empowers your customer?
Super, thank you for that. And you talked about the value of home. I think each one of us here can relate to it, irrespective of what we do. And therefore, Pavitra, segueing to you, you've created these homes. You've been able to do it for a long time, and you have seen, I'm assuming, trends change, decision-making change, influences change. Could you talk to us a little bit about how that change has happened? What have you seen? And with all the action in the sector, what more do you see as potentially influencing that change when it comes to the concepts and quality of home?
So while the sector is very different, I run a very large residential real estate business. This is one subsection of that, but it is extremely different. But what is actually the same is that still the core is that you're building real estate. And you can't go too far away from the fact that real estate is a very different kind of sector. So the underlying trust factor in terms of who you're buying from, who is developing for you, will you get your product on time? And time naturally is a huge, even bigger factor here. So will you get your product on time, and what is it going to be? So our experience was, and I think it will still continue to be the same, is that the typical sales cycle is not the same for senior living. Someone wants to know that the project is coming up, that is going to be delivered, and who is going to be managing that project in terms of providing all of the services. So I think that itself is a huge mindset shift, and that's why many real estate developers who are in the typical real estate space find it a challenge to do senior living, because the entire business model is different. But still the core is the same, where you have to establish that trust. In our experience, a lot of the people who either want to live in our communities or are looking for their parents to live in the communities, they also, this was surprising to us. They still wanted to trust Brigade, even though we had no experience running a senior living community, but they just trusted the brand. And for us, that was a big eye-opener. They were happy with us providing the services, even though we hadn't necessarily done it before, because there's a high trust factor. But I think what is helpful is that today there are many other platforms and many other operators who can come in and run and manage the space. But on the developer side, there is still always this reticence about it, because you are lending your name to that project, and it will continue to be branded whoever you are, and then operated by another provider. So I think that is where the trust factor is still a huge aspect of it, while many other things have evolved. Who the eventual customer is, what are the buying patterns, can we actually create a rental model in this space? I think that is one thing that has not necessarily been cracked at scale for many different reasons. We are too nascent for any kind of residential REIT in India because of the way interest rates are and so on. So, but that's the main thing that has to actually get cracked, the affordability of senior living across different spectrums. Today, I think there is a fairly large market in the more premium sort of senior living space, but how do you make it more accessible across the globe, across the spectrum? And that is something that we are trying to experiment with today. But if you get those two major factors, everything else I think will fall into place, because those two I think take up at least 2/3 of the entire decision making.
Have you been in front of investors and people looking at Have you been in front of a Priya, for example, or a Prashant over the last 2 or 3 years where you've had to talk about the space, and what have you heard back from them and what they're thinking about specifically the residences for senior space?
So no, I would say no, actually. We've not been too much in front of the VC space because I think the real estate aspect of it is a little intimidating, I would say, or just very different. It's just a different animal altogether. But from our conversation earlier on, the real estate piece is what is difficult to scale. The operating piece is much easier too. So for someone in the VC space looking naturally to scale up, they would be looking at the service providing aspect of it rather than the physical space, which is the difficult thing to really sort of expand on.
Super, thank you. Dr. Mehta, we were talking before the panel and you mentioned you were overseas and you were having conversations about the entire private equity interest in the aging space, specifically in India. Please share some insights with us as to what you are seeing and hearing about the investor community and their interest levels and what they are looking for when it comes to signing that check for any player. And then I'll talk a little bit more about ecosystem as a whole.
No, thanks, Tara. I think it's important because, I think when private equity comes in, it really catalyzes growth because, the capital is available. We've seen that because if you look at the multi-speciality, single speciality, pre-COVID and post-COVID, it's a different era altogether. So I think, when I was in Singapore, I think one of the biggest advantages we have, and the session I did was, why has India become a sweet spot for private equity? What was the next session? Is China investable, right? So one victory for us, right? You don't need to do that. The second thing I think is that we always talk in India about the demographic dividend, right? So everybody assumes this is a young country, I should manufacture. Nobody talks that 300 million people are going to be above the age of 65. So that's the first thing. Senior care is below the radar, right? No one's heard of it. Everybody thinks, if I go in India, I'll only see young people, and that's not true, right? We all getting to the next level. The second component, I think, is, before they really invest, they need to look at the business model, right? And I think in senior care, we've had multiple business models. We have a lot of success stories. But again, it's below the radar. Also, I think the third thing in India is that it's not one homogeneous country, right? We have 30 states, which could be 30 countries of the European Union. Each of them has it. So I think one of the proofs of scaling up would be, are you in Bangalore, but are you in Delhi also? Because North India and South India have very different requirements from that perspective. I think also they look at when there is a pull and not a push. I'm not going and selling. And people are coming and saying, my father's turning 70, I need to start looking out. So that's one early indicator overall. And that's beginning to happen, I think, in India. I think for senior care, the most important component, I personally feel, is trust, right? So as people get older, and we all deal with our parents, right? It's difficult, even they don't trust us sometimes. So I tell my mom, go get this done. And she'll say, oh, no, what do you know, right? So I think as we build our models, trust is very important. So I read this somewhere. Write your values in ink. Write your strategy in pencil. You could always change that. I think one of the learnings we have is leave the multi-speciality. The single specialties in India have scaled up, right? When I joined Apollo, I was part of Apollo in '97. We said we are a one-stop shop. Unbundling of the hospital space occurred. And we should look at that same thing. So eye care, it never needed to be in the hospital, right? But whatever some of the principles they did it on are very important as we go look at senior care. One is that you look at an asset-light model. The second component is that you can reach operational efficiencies early. That's very important. Third is you use technology. So if you look at eye care, a very good example. Why is it possible? Because healthcare is about process, it's about infrastructure, process, and outcomes. But the doctor today, who actually post-MS 3 years, has the same outcomes on the cataract side. Not because he's more experienced, but he has technology. So I think that's one big building block. The other part, I think, is we've often, done services as a pipeline, right? There's demand on the other side, I'll push water from this side. suddenly the demand dries up and, I'm out in the NCLT, right? That shouldn't happen. So should we think of not as a pipeline, but as a platform? And when you grow, say that this is my core competence, right? If I'm in real estate, that's my core competence. I'm not going to do everything. Because then what happens is everything becomes suboptimal. The idea is, do you want to be the Amazon of senior care? And I think the technology part can't be overemphasized. We can keep talking about business models, but the tech players have showed us the business model is as good as the technology behind it. I think, what success would count in senior care? I think being socially relevant, but economically efficient, which I think there is a mismatch. People think, if you're socially relevant, you need to be funded by a trust. And I think, Rajat was telling me that when do you think we can really celebrate we've come of age? I think the first $100 million investment. And I think it's got a greater emphasis than just India. If we crack this model in India, I think this will give us boundless opportunities in a borderless world.
Thank you for that, very insightful. Prashant, you talked about the ideas that motivate and drive you. You also have a network of, I'm sure, very interesting investors looking at various spaces in India. What is the conversation in your group around investing in the aging space?
So actually, Priya will also know this, not much yet. I don't think I've seen a lot of venture investors, and two reasons. I think one, there's a still perception that there's a big real estate component in the model, and in this real estate component, because there are no rental or REIT-like structures, why would somebody want to get into an asset-heavy space? But I think there'll be more supportive startups, I think initially, and if they can take the shape of platforms, like you said, sir, I think it's more useful. You can't just, because it's going to be too small. If you're just providing one sliver of service, it's not going to be large enough. For example, I think functional foods, right, is a huge opportunity, but can you build a large enough business on just functional foods for seniors? I don't know. I don't know if we are there. Maybe yes, right? There's functional foods for diabetic care. There's functional foods. Seniors have a huge issue with protein, right? There's a big opportunity in, there's new protein, digestible protein types of foods. Seniors have a huge problem with targeted supplements, right? So, you can't just, based on your neurocognitive assessment, your vitamin D levels could be something else, right? Not the standard what somebody else takes as vitamin D. But who's going to help you in that targeted, so that's where I'm going back to precision medicine. I think there's a lot that's got to change in the idea of medicine itself for a lot of these services to work. But that's one area I think somebody can bundle some of these and kind of make sense of that. The second area that I think venture investors will get interested in is, if there is already a reasonably deployed user base of these homes and these, and there'll be a lag here, right? So, I was just doing a Google, and today I guess it has to be Perplexity, not Google. But I just saw that when it comes to premium senior living spaces, Bangalore has maybe already 20-25 of different scales and sizes. So extrapolated to India, right? We have 250, let's say, in the next. So when you have a user base, when you have a targeted, then go to market becomes easier. So I think there's a little, you'll see maybe a little bit of build-up of these communities. And once the communities are built up, I think there'll be layers of services or platforms that can then become interesting for VCs to fund.
Interesting, thank you. Priya, in your space, we talked about specifically, you taking the decision and the ingredients for home and the investment in that. What else are you seeing in the senior care ecosystem? So we've talked about specific medicine and longevity. We've talked about obviously the physical assets of home. What else are you seeing in the ecosystem that's generating some interests from people in the investing world?
We've seen a lot of people trying to solve for this, but like Prashant said, a lot of it lands up, while they're very important problem statements, because we have the benefit of getting paid to judge, and I say it with all humility, we have a certain vantage point. So you realize that many of these land up becoming point solutions. So the biggest worry is, can they actually drive the market, right? So lots of people doing marketplaces, lots of people doing very specific products for seniors, people doing IoT, people trying to figure out, precision medication, like Prashant said. So seen a variety of that. But let me also step back to talk about our side of the world. It's not just the entrepreneur's perspective in this. This is a very unique space. And there are multiple unique spaces like this in India. And I think investors like Prashant would understand this. The last 3 years, I have been personally thinking, like, if you look at venture investment in tech companies versus what are the industries which are going to drive GDP in the country, there's a mismatch. Which means the current model of even venture investing, if we were to drive some of those transformation, cannot happen in the current model. Like Rana said, private equity come, but they come after a certain scale. But it takes a while for you to achieve that certain scale, which means either you need to have had that personal wealth or patience, because the two levers are capital and time, right? Those are the only two levers. So once private equity comes, where they come in is from a financial angle. I feel, and I'm putting it out there, and happy to be challenged, we need to build mutants of PE and VC into this space. What I mean by a mutant is you have to come with a private equity mindset of being comfortable taking these bets which are slightly structurally different, but not come with just a financial measuring angle, but from a transformation angle, right? And that's what at GC, we actually not just do it in age tech, we are doing it in health, we are trying to figure out pay wider models, where if you have this kind of capital, can you actually incubate and create and structurally create some of these possibilities? But the math for many others won't work, unfortunately, right? Because ultimately, we have a fiduciary responsibility of going and delivering X returns, and that can come only when you scale fast or there's a certain IRR, right? So, did that answer?
Very, very well, and thank you for that. I think it'll get everyone to think and possibly pivot from what they are doing. To close our session, if you had to each write a check of your own, of your personal hard-earned money, I'm not going to say the check size, let's leave that to your imagination, what would be the one thing, and it doesn't mean that there is an absence of others, but what would be the one thing that you would look for in the person or the entity or the idea or the organization asking you for that check? The one thing.
So it's very easy for me. We just did a large deal at Primus. I think I personally, this is my personal thing, I really look for customer insight. Really look for somebody who deeply understands the customer, because that is very pivotal in a space like this, and not somebody who says, I've created this product and let me figure out how to manifest that in the customer.
Thank you.
So I think I look for something what's incorporated in ASLI. It's senior living and not senior care, because I think that is a very different component. Often, we just look at the care component of it, and that's, if you look at from a social determinant, that's only 20%. So I look at someone which can go on and keep scaling indefinitely, because the needs are going to change. As you mentioned, also clinically, we realize we're going to live much longer. But I think the more important time is your functional ability at 60 going to be the same than at 85? We all want to live long, but no one wants to be old. So those are the founding blocks I look at.
Expand a little bit on the differentiation in your mind of living and care.
So I think living is caring to every component. It's the whole ecosystem you can build. I'm not looking at a senior as a patient. The minute it comes as care, I start looking at him as a patient. So I need to look at every component so that which his functionality, both physical, mental, the financial, the residential, all those components come in. And how do you build a platform? Because this platform is just going to grow, because ultimately that 300 million will go to 400 million.
Interesting. Thank you. Pavitra, if you can.
So again, from my perspective, which is more from the real estate side, everything that we've talked about is, having this, there has to be this foundation, for lack of a better word, and for lack of a real estate term. You have to still have the real estate. And I think that is what is really holding back the growth. If you're talking about having an ecosystem or a platform or whatever, how are you going to get the real estate to really work? And I think that requires a lot of financial innovation for developers like us to be able to do this at scale. So whether we find the right kind of capital partner who's willing to wait and have the, patience to invest. So the word that you're looking for, probably it's two words, but financial innovation, I think, is really important, because we need to figure out how we're going to do that and develop at scale, so that we can actually have these communities where many of these solutions have an opportunity to actually excel and scale there as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm very much in line with what Priya was saying in terms of how embedded and how deep and soaked they are in that space, and that would be a big criteria for me to put a personal check. The other thing I would look for is there a opportunity for building that IP from India for the rest of the world? I think because some of this may manifest first with that kind of opportunity than within India itself. There's this one last, concern a lot of VCs have about the senior citizen space, and I'll put it out there, that the toughest folks to get money out of are the senior citizens, right?
No, it's true.
So from a venture investor, how do you make money from people who don't want to give you money, right? Or you have to force them to give you money. So just, the whole push and pull kind of thing. I'm sure there is a lot of pull, but is there money coming with that pull, right? So that's my thought.
Super, thank you so much. I'm not going to attempt to summarize it, because I think it will be diluting the incredible intelligence and wisdom each of you have shared. But I will say that I've at least come out of this conversation very motivated, simply because we are at that trajectory and we are seeing that this is the next wave. And for a long time, that hope and the top of the mountain didn't exist for us, Priya. And I think that seeing what's happening in this space and these levels of conversations and dialogues and having a varied view of the sector is quite phenomenal and very energizing for me, at least. So thank you so very much for your time today, and look forward to chatting more about this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I request the moderator to kindly hand over the small token of appreciation to honor panelists on stage, please. I request all of you guys to kindly step forward. We're going to be having a group photograph. Let's capture this lovely moment. Let's have all of you guys step forward.